Last week I was still trying to convince myself that it was really late summer. But this week I'm forced to reluctantly admit, to split that infinitive, that it's probably early autumn. You can tell because the first signs are there in your garden. The leaves of this hosta, Francis Williams, now with every pleat and gusset burnished with yellow. And the snails and slugs are moving in yet again to turn them into lace curtains. For tidy gardeners, it's a nightmarish time of year. But for those who like getting plants for free, it's a time of great promise. There are cuttings to take of things that might surprise you, like these shrub roses. Very promising stems coming up here, 4, 5 feet, 6 feet high, and about pencil thickness. Now you can use those to make cuttings, and the great thing about a rose propagated from a hardwood cutting is that it doesn't send up suckers, or if it does, they're of the variety. So look for these long, fresh stems, cut them out so that you end up with a stem that is about pencil thickness. Strip off, ow, thorny, the lower leaves, and then make your lowest cut just underneath a leaf joint and your uppermost cut just above a leaf. And you end up with a cutting about a foot tall, pencil thick, 2 leaves on the top. Now the thing about these long shoots is you can get several cuttings from each one, which is why I took it fairly low down, moving down into that thicker growth. And from something like that, you see, you can end up with 1, 2, maybe 3 cuttings before it starts to get too whippy on the top. In fact, if you work down, you can do it that way about as well. The thornier the rose bush, the more uncomfortable this becomes. But the greatest pleasure taking rose cuttings like this is the fact that you need no special conditions to get them to root, just a bit of garden soil. Of all propagation techniques, I think that of hardwood cuttings, taking cuttings at this time of year when the wood has ripened, is the most user-friendly because it demands the least facilities. 1 spade, 1 patch of soil in reasonable light, and then make a slit trench by pushing that spade down almost to the full depth of the blade and wiggling it about. Then ease your spade out again. Try not to pull away the soil from the sides of that trench. All you need now is some sharp sand, river sand, not the soft orange builder's sand, which isn't sharp enough. Trickle that down into the bottom of that slit trench, a couple of handfuls, because it makes sure that at the bottom of each cutting the soil's well drained. And then, because they're rigid, they're fairly easy just to push down into the trench, spacing them about 3 or 4 inches apart. And once you've done that and left just the top 2 leaves sticking out, put your welly alongside them and firm back the earth. They can stay here for about a year now, and during the course of next spring and summer they'll root, and next autumn, exactly 1 year hence, you can transplant them to their final resting places. It's a technique you can use with hybrid teas and floribundas just as easily as with shrub roses, and from none of them do you get suckers.
The moment you catch sight of this striking garden in Reading, you just know that it belongs to an accomplished gardener with a love of plants and a real eye for detail. Janet Bonny has passionately pursued her love of gardening for over 22 years and has clearly demonstrated that an organic garden can also be gorgeous. So what's your overall approach to the planting?
It has to be coordinated. You can have all sorts of colours, you can do what you like with colour, but it has to be balanced as well. This patio is 2-tone. If you sit in one place, you can see the blue and the red, lovely, beautiful, vibrant colours. If you sit in another place and look down the garden, you immediately see the gold and the blue coming through, completely different.
It's lovely just picking your way through the baskets.
Yes, I think the baskets and the high datura give height to the
Wonderful.
patio, which is nice.
And the gravel area. Now tell me about this.
Yes, I love my gravel area. Having needed to do it because the ground underneath was waterlogged, I decided to membrane and to gravel it, and it's worked absolutely perfectly.
Yes, your hostas look incredibly healthy.
Yes, they're very, very healthy. They like it there, they're comfortable there, and there's not too much damage from slugs and snails. I do garden organic, so I don't use chemicals, and the gravel puts them off.
Now you've got wonderful hot colours in this area.
Yes, yes, I love this area. I love the hot colours.
And this is a beautiful dahlia.
Yes, that's gold crown. It's a very nice, strong growing plant, good stiff stems, doesn't fall over, and it goes beautifully with the border with the oranges and the yellow.
At our feet we've got thymes,
Yes.
chamomile.
The chamomile is deliberately set in the path so that when you walk through it, you're going to hit it with your feet and you get the nice perfume.
Now this is lovely, this water section in the
Yes.
middle.
It's intended to lead you into the end of the garden, and by coming up on the bridge, you get a lovely view.
And a gorgeous use of plants as well. You've got a little rockery area here.
That's fairly Japanese, where you've got the 3 rocks representing the family. And that combination I'm very pleased with.
Yes, it's beautiful, the heuchera and the
Heuchera,
cordyline.
purple pallas, cordyline, lovely physocarpus, and the aconitum, the beautiful cerulean blue, shows through very nicely.
Yeah,
It's very pretty.
gorgeous. And then, wow, some
Yes.
real jewel colours.
Yes, they're beautiful. Red dahlias and the salvias, and through there the rudbeckias. You get a lovely distance picture.
And are all these dahlias actually planted in situ?
No, there's quite a lot in that border that are in pots. It's spot the pot. At this time of the year particularly, you'll get blank spaces in a border where your annuals have gone over or something stopped flowering. So I chose to grow quite a lot of dahlias in 8-inch pots, and they are dotted around in that border where they give the most impact.
This is a gorgeous area, Janet.
Yes, this is my favourite part of the garden. There's so much to see. This bit's Mediterranean, to the right it's cottage.
You've got it all up here.
I've got it all up here, yes. I love this bit.
And there's this circular section which seems to have been divided up.
Yes, it's sort of colour-coded. You've got a hot section, red sedges and the carex, geums. Then you've got a nice blue, silver, white section just there that's very pretty.
And this is a pillar of colour with these Siphonia petunias.
Yes, I think that's a very pretty feature. It was something I planted up the ivy tower about 5 years ago onto chicken wire, and this year I've put a 20-inch basket on top and lots of tone-on-tone Siphonias and petunias.
What do you think's made you such an accomplished gardener?
Learning by your mistakes. Many, many, many mistakes.
This is a lily, tiger lily, Lilium tigrinum. But look a little more closely at what you might consider as a fairly shoddy plant, and you'll see an odd sort of development. In the leaf axils, you've got what look like little black bulbs. Well, that's exactly what they are. They're bulbules. And some lilies develop bulbules, often in times of stress. This plant's in a small pot. It's probably feeling a bit stressful. You can even encourage them to form on Lilium candidum, the Madonna lily, by cutting off the flower buds just before they open. And instead of flowers, you get this lovely array of little bulbules that will make bulbs themselves. If you're patient, just ease them off with your fingers out of the leaf axils and insert them on the surface of a pot full of compost. This is ordinary multi-purpose compost. Space these bulbules about 1 inch apart. Some of them, really dinky ones, even have tiny little roots like that. Think how many plants here you're going to get out of one stem of this lily. And when you've got the little bulbules all over the surface of the compost, just cover them with grit. This just holds those bulbules in position and makes sure they're really well drained. They don't sit in too much soggy compost. And then it's off to the cold frame. How long do you have to wait for them to flower? Well, about 3 or 4 years. I told you had to be patient, but you don't have to wait anything like that long for this weirdo. Is it a fish? Is it a reptile? Is it one of Mrs. Schilling's discarded hats or something that David Attenborough left behind? It's none of those things. It's a plant. This is erymurous, the foxtail lily. Now, in early summer, you'll see its wonderful spires, really feathery and airy, carrying these little starry flowers erupting from your herbaceous border. But at planting time, right now, this is what it looks like. Here we've got 2 fat buds in the centre, going to produce those foxtails hopefully next summer. And these roots, these are incredibly fleshy. What it does need is really well-drained soil and a sunny spot. So I've found a patch in my Mediterranean garden where I'm going to put it in. And the soil over the years here has been enriched with manure and is on the light side. You can tell it's quite different from where I put those rose cuttings in. Now, these plants are native to Western and Central Europe, places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and they need really well-drained soil. That's what they get in the native environment. So sharp sand sprinkled into the bottom of the hole and then worked in with your spade or fork will really make sure that underneath them the earth doesn't get too soggy. Drainage is vital for these beauties. And then if I just mound up that soil a bit, for the roots of the foxtail lily to sit on and just arrange it so that the buds are in the centre, slightly higher up, and the roots are cascading downwards. Then mix a bit more sand with the surrounding soil. Again, always thinking of drainage. And throw it back in. Could be happy here. Lightly firm it when you've got that far with your fingers. A good mulch of manure on the surface of the soil now. I'll insulate it a bit for the winter, and it really is something of a firework plant, like the blue touch paper, and stand well back.
With Sheffield's famous hills as a backdrop, this street of small terraced houses is only a stone's throw from the city centre. And there's absolutely nothing here to suggest that just yards away you'll find woodland, wildlife and exuberant meadow planting, all contained within one typical small city backyard.
It's the work of Nigel Dunnett, who's a lecturer in landscape design at the University of Sheffield, with a particular interest in ecological planting.
Nigel, when you started work on this garden 3.5 years ago, you were faced with a typical inner city plot and on a steep slope. So how on earth do you design a garden like that?
Because it's sloping, it allows you to break the space up and terrace it. It's narrow, but this is facing east-west, so part of it's very sunny on this side. That side's really shady, so again, I made the most of that.
And what about the planting? What sort of shade-loving plants did you go for?
Those with foliage effects. Although I've used whites and flowers which stand out well in the shade, it's mainly foliage and texture which I've gone for. There's the castoral plant, Fatsia, big perennial rhubarb behind, all things with big dramatic leaves, and then a ground cover underneath of evergreens.
So you've got just a solid massive box here. What was the idea behind that?
Well, it's deliberate. It's really like a slab of vegetation which I'll keep cut flat, level with the upper terrace. It's evergreen, it stays the same all through the year, it's good for the winter. But also it's a contrast with the rest of the planting, which is really exuberant and loose.
So what about the planting on the sunny side of the garden? What dictated your choice?
Well, several things. I wanted a really exciting, very vibrant type of planting to match the hot, sunny parts of the garden. I wanted a framework of grasses which give a structure to the planting, but also a permanence. So from the fresh shoots of spring through to summer flowering, right in autumn, they're always there and provide a matrix, if you like, through which these seasonal highlights of perennials perform. The Rebeckias are doing their thing at the moment. Later on, there are these fantastic dark-stem Michaelmas daisies, Calliope. And so you have a continuous succession, if you like, of highlights within this framework.
Yeah. But I notice on your hot, dry, sunny border you've got Lythrum, which likes boggy soil,
Yes.
so how come?
Well, if you look down here, it's sitting within a pond, a small water feature. I've got 2 young, very energetic children, so it had to be made safe. And rather than having the usual metal grid, I built this wooden framework with broomsticks, painted it, and put an aluminium surround. And I think it works really well within the garden.
Yes, it's lovely. Moving into something.
We're now moving
less
into
formal.
loose chippings, so as we go into a more natural part of the garden, the surfacing becomes more naturalistic.
It is much more informal, isn't it? It really kind of meanders through the planting.
This is a completely different feel and atmosphere to the garden here. It's cool, it's shady, it's green.
Yeah, it's a woodland garden,
It
but
is,
in a
yes.
tiny space. How do you manage it?
Well, by close planting of trees, these big beeches are planted about 4 or 5 metres apart, and then an understory, if you like, of hazels and various other shrubs, and then a dense planting of foliage plants like the fern.
I can't help noticing you use a lot of recycled materials. Is that particularly important?
It is. It really extends the theme from the ecological, naturalistic approach to planting through to materials. So all the stone in the garden is recycled, reclaimed. Use a lot of old roof slates, for example, and wood.
And the ecological approach is very important in your work generally, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, my passion is the creative use of plants with mixing ecology and horticultural design. In conjunction with the City Council in Sheffield, we've got some large trial areas in the parks to try and revitalise public planting, to bring back colour and interest and diversity to these landscapes.
And what kind of mixtures are you experimenting with?
Well, this past couple of years I've been working with annuals, creating very vibrant, dynamic meadows. I've used natives such as cornflower, corn cockle, corn marigold, but the trouble with them is that they have a fairly short flowering season, and so by adding in cultivated annuals such as Californian poppies or red flax, you can extend the seasonal display right the way into the autumn and use seed heads and upright skeletons to extend that right the way into the winter. The mixing of the non-natives with the natives really is strictly for parks or for gardens. I would never recommend doing that in the countryside to replace existing meadows or to try and recreate natural meadows.
And where do you think it'll go from here? What's the next stage?
Well, I see this whole ecological approach to planting having a huge application, not only in gardens like this, but in the public landscape, to really bring back that excitement and energy into our surroundings, which is lacking today in many places.
In a few weeks' time, it'll be the start of the traditional planting season for shifting bare root trees and shrubs like roses, fruit trees and bushes can be dug up from nursery rows and transplanted to your own garden. So get on with soil preparation now, digging in loads of muck, compost, manure, anything organic and rich. Other jobs to be getting on with this week. Wash down the glass on your greenhouse. It's certainly one of the muckiest jobs going, but it's also one of the most important. That way, through the winter, plants can receive every last ray of sunshine. Collect the seed heads of annuals that you want to preserve for next year and store them somewhere cool and dry. And pot up rooted cuttings so they can establish themselves well before the winter. Pelargoniums and fuchsias can stay in the greenhouse, and things like this sage can be put in a cold frame.
Well, it was about 8 years ago and I came down here to start the nursery. Before that, I'd been a currency dealer in the city. I was working nights, tired, really not a great life. By 32, it was beginning to get to me. I was as wide as a sheet, I weighed only 8 stone, and thankfully, I was made redundant and took the money and started this nursery.
He embarked on a 2-year course in nursery practice, and in 1993, Guy and Emma fell in love with this 15th century farmhouse in the middle of Dartmoor, where Guy started a nursery devoted to his passion, exotic climbing plants. The remoteness of the location belies the fact that this nursery is not only on the cutting edge of horticulture, but also on the cutting edge of technology. You can't visit this nursery. The catalogue is literally the lifeline, and the internet site has only been open 6 months, but already it accounts for over 25% of all the sales.
Come on.
It's not every day a nurseryman invites you into his favourite polythene tunnel to take a look at his Dutchman's pipe.
This one here is called Aristolochia brasiliensis, also known as the pelican flower. Some of them actually give off quite a malodorous smell.
It does smell absolutely disgusting.
There are some very ornamental species that actually don't have any smell. Come and have a look over here. This is Aristolochia gigantea, Chris, and this, again, although it doesn't look like a pipe from the front, you can actually see that it has the characteristic swollen tube at the back. This will actually climb to about 20-25 feet in the UK in a conservatory if you've got the room to give it. In the wild, I've seen them up to 40 feet high. The great thing about this species is you can grow it in a 2-litre pot inside a conservatory and it'll flower on a wigwam.
And what sort of temperature am I looking for?
You're looking for a minimum of at least 10 degrees on this, so you need to have a conservatory at room temperature. Bright, well-lit position with a good quality fertile soil, and they are just a really easy group of plants to grow.
You could be forgiven for thinking that it's only tropical plants that are possessed of such exotic beauty. But for me, some of our British natives are real treasures. On this now barren slope in my garden, in spring, I've got used to showing you my snake's head fritillaries, those wonderful nodding bells of dusky purple and creamy white with their checkerboard pattern. They're dwindling in the wild, but you can do your bit for nature conservation as well as for beautifying your own garden by planting them in a spot where they won't dry out too much. They like fairly moist soil. Chalky or acid doesn't seem to matter. These are the bulbs. The plumper and larger, the better. You can see the roots there at the bottom. There's the shoot that's going to come up in the centre. And just lightly scatter them on the soil and plant them, if they don't fall in a clump, where they fall. Use a sharp trowel and take out a divot of soil. Ease it out. Put the bulb in, about 3 or 4 inches deep, and then replace the divot. The great thing that I've noticed on this damp slope is that the bulbs have multiplied over the years, and I've now got even more flowers than I started with. With a bag of bulbs like this, you can have hours of amusement. Whatever the weather this weekend, enjoy your garden. Ta-da.
We'll be finding out just what lies under Porthcurno Beach and coast at 10 this morning. And once we've cleared that up, we'll be birding with Biloddy in Mallorca and Wales, before handing over to me at midday for some more cunning forward planning in Model Gardens.